This is the DRS train.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the DRS Train podcast. Bit different this time, as you can see. New background for me because I've moved house, so slightly different setup. No bassoon for the time being. Maybe it will return. But yeah, so we're here to talk about the British Grand Prix. Quite an interesting one, particularly for myself and Nedzo, because we both went to the race. We went separately, so different grandstands and different experiences because Nedzo camped and I drove in. But yeah, we did that just as I went last year, and then obviously we've got we're joined by Achil and Chizzy who watched it on TV, so then no doubt be a lot of help because anyone who's been to a Grand Prix will know that you miss a lot of things when you can only see one corner and a TV screen that's quite far away. So yeah, I think to start, it's going to mostly be me and Nedzo just discussing how it was being at the track and actually getting to watch a race in person. Um, I mean, for me, it was an amazing weekend. Like, it was a pretty decent race, all things considered, because last year was amazing. I went in 2011, 2012. Those weren't particularly good races. But to be honest, the atmosphere is so good that you kind of don't really care so much if it's good or bad race. And I think Nedzo would agree that Silverstone has one of the best atmospheres on the Formula One calendar.
Well, I can say, as an experienced attender of many Grand Prix, specifically two now, both of them at Silverstone, I can say that Silverstone has the best atmosphere of any track that I've been to. I think also I think I saw online somewhere that this weekend broke the record attendance for Formula One race, which I wouldn't be surprised at. Yeah. You mentioned that because I did camp and obviously Peter didn't, but I also went camp by going into the Lando stand and sitting there for the entire weekend and having grandstand seats in the Lando stand. That was entertaining, being the one of the only odd ones out in a sea of fluorescent green, people wearing obviously very focused on health and safety, wearing high vis jackets. That's obviously what it was. It wasn't any merch or anything.
It is quite a sight, the Lando stand, because for me, I had general admission on Friday and Saturday, so I just wandered around. And because it was a sprint weekend, they didn't let you in the grandstands, so I had to just put up a chair and just wherever I could, which was mostly fine. There are some spots which are really crap for viewing. For example, for qualifying, I went to Vale Bank and basically couldn't see anything, so I just watched. I turned around and faced away from the circuit because there was a massive screen right behind me. For the race, I was opposite the pit lane, which is really amazing because in the past I've done Beckett's, Chapel, and Stowe for the race. And I was thinking I need to see the pit stops to actually get an idea of what's going on because once the pit stops happen, you completely lose the plot of who is where. And you miss a lot of information. And also, you get to see like all the pre-race stuff, which is really cool because like I spotted like Jeremy Clarkson hanging around by the Alpine guys on the grid, and you see the drivers doing their warm-ups, and we got to see there was the Lego car parade as well, which was all good fun. So that's, yeah, if you can, I mean it's really expensive, but if you can, you getting a seat opposite the pit lane at any circuit is going to be amazing. But yeah, like you said, highest attending one. I think it was nearly 600,000 people across the whole weekend, um, which is huge. There was 175,000 on race day, which I can believe because it was absolutely heaving. I mean, it was busy every day, but especially on the Sunday. Um, it's kind of remarkable how everything goes off so well. It's unbelievably well catered for in terms of like food and facilities and everything else. And even being such a massive site as well, and taking a long time to walk around everywhere. There's just people everywhere, and you're constantly dodging crowds and whatnot. I mean, in terms of fans and stuff, it's obvious. I'd say from the reception, Lewis is clearly by far the most popular driver still for the British fans, especially now. I think the enthusiasm is really there now that he's at Ferrari, and also having won a race 2 races ago. It's got everyone very worked up. I mean, all the British drivers were received well. I mean, of the five, I'd say probably Behrman the least, but Lindblad was quite well. I think because he's funny and stuff, they seem to quite like him. Antonelli was actually quite popular. Out of the non-British drivers, he would get a lot of cheers, even though he's Lewis's biggest rival and George and whatnot. And yeah, like Leclerc, a bunch of people like him, but other than that, obviously that like the amount of like fluorescent green, as Nedzo will attest to, was quite overwhelming. I think into just everywhere, especially I mean, the Lando stand is quite impressive structure, but
Mm.
he's really galvanized his fan base to just sort of get in with it, and all buy the merch. And like it's not just the shirts, but they had like fluorescent green like camping chair bags and stuff like that. It was just everything. It was so strange. But for me, like no one seemed to care about Lando wherever I was. I imagine Nezo, it was different for you being in the Lando stand whenever he drove past.
Yep. I will say a couple of things. So, everyone in the Lando stand got a quote unquote Lando fan pack, which included the shirts that you saw, the fluorescent t-shirts we got for free. They also got a tote bag, which is just, I don't know why they call it a tote bag, it's just a bag. And there was something else that I can't remember now. But there were caps, they were handing out paper flags before the race, green fluorescent paper flags. I will say, because I was going with family members and a couple of family friends, and they didn't appreciate, because they were Orlando fans, they didn't appreciate me saying that in my opinion, all Orlando Norris fans were either women or homosexuals, and they didn't find that funny, even though I did. But yeah, it was. I will also say the Lando said they only ever cheered for two people. Obviously, Lando Norris. Can you guess who the other driver was that they even remotely cheered for? Was
Hamilton.
Lewis.
Yes, it was Lewis. I thought I'd maybe get some variation there, but I think that's quite obvious. Yeah, Lewis was indeed the person that was cheered the second most. Yeah, I'd say it was fun. Lando was in qualifying, and in qualifying he was cheered every single time he went by, obviously because he only go by like 3-4 times on a hot lap every single time, and obviously he was waving to the crowd at points. I think his first lap out in FP1 he waved, his first lap out in qualifying he waved, and I think on the parade lap he did as well. And then obviously on the parade lap with all the Lego cars, you guys might not have seen it on TV, but he did an interview with Natalie Pinkham in the gravel trap at Stowe outside of a Lando stand, and did the whole shirt cannon thing, and did an interview and was doing all sorts. So there was a lot going on. Yeah, there was food prices were generally quite good as well. Like that's something that people often find. Like you'll find they charge like ridiculous money for food, but I found it was quite good. I will say there were some problems. Most of the weekend went off swimmingly. There were some problems with the camping. Apparently, there was, I think it was the Woodcote camping. They just told people that when people arrived, they were just saying, "Oh, just pitch up wherever you want and don't worry." And it got to the point where people had kind of taken so much liberty with how much space they were using that people were arriving and being turned away because there was no space for them to camp on the campsite that they paid for. So they had to go and be pushed somewhere else. It was quite crazy. But other than that, I mean, obviously for me, I can't handle big crowds because I'll get pushed around and all that sort of stuff with my condition. But generally, other than having to kind of wait 5 minutes, 10 minutes for everyone to exit the stands before going and doing my own thing, I think it was well handled. There was a couple of times where there was no running water at the track, or where there was no hot water, or where the flushers weren't working on the toilets. But other than that, I think it was pretty well handled for. Literally, I mean, the way they count it is weird. 600,000 people is essentially 200,000 people over 3 days. But yeah,
more or less.
So the interview with Norris was shown. It is still available on the pre-race live on the YouTube channel of Formula One. Just a question, Nedzo. Was Norris standing for the interview in the same place Verstappen got stuck in the gravel?
I don't think so. I think he was. It was just in the middle of a gravel trap, and then he stood on top of the barriers, the Tech Pro barriers, and started doing all his other stuff.
Fired the T-shirt cannon that killed Maud Flanders and that. Yeah,
That kind of
none
yeah.
none of
That
you
was
will get that reference. You're too young, but yeah.
No, there was a lot going on. We also saw the Lego cars. I saw Ollie Behrman doing donuts, which was just driving in circles really fast, which was quite funny in my opinion. And just drivers generally being relaxed. But also, anytime Mohammed Ben Sulayem came up on the screen, everyone booed, which I thought was quite
Yeah.
funny.
That was the thing, is that because everyone's really respectful. Like none of the not even Max was getting booed, but then he does actually have quite a lot of fans at the circuit. Like there was, if you ranked the merch by how much their merch has
Yeah.
worn, Red Bull were like third or fourth. There were a lot of Max fans there, but he wasn't really getting booed.
Yeah, there was a big cheer when he, not when he retired, but when he got out of the car, which insinuates that it was a goodwill kind of, oh, he's safe, he's all right.
But like the only.
I was going to say I caught video of his. We'll get to it in the end, but I caught video of that crash. I caught the end of the video of the crash because I was busy filming something else. I think I was because I was trying to film in the race. I was trying to film Behrman go by every single lap. I lost him during the safety car period because I was focusing on Max, obviously, because that was the big thing that was happening. But I did catch the end of Max crash.
I mean, I filmed the start, like the first lap. I filmed the end. I think it was about lap 12. I just left it for an entire lap just to see the entire like field spread unedited. Yes. I did that, and I took a little bit of other clips and everything. But yeah, the only people who actively got booed all weekend was MBS and then Lisa Nandy when she did the trophies on the podium.
Who's that, sorry?
Lisa Nandy.
I don't know who that is.
Okay, well, I knew the other two wouldn't. I'm surprised you didn't. She's a cabinet minister.
Okay.
So yeah, high-ranking politician. Yeah. But otherwise, everyone's quite like respectful and whatnot.
Yes.
And like you said, food is. I mean, it's not too bad. It's like a pizza for like 15 quid could be worse, but it's really good food. There's tons of stuff for that. The toilets were pretty grim though. Like flush didn't work a lot of the time. Stuff like that. The main stage is really impressive. It's kind of like the pyramid stage at Glastonbury. It's an enormous thing, and I didn't go there for the gigs in the evening, but they did all the driver interviews, and they'd come out and do that, and that was all. They play games with them, and that was quite fun. And if you went in like side on, you could get reasonably close and see them fairly well, and they'd throw caps and stuff into the crowds and all of that. So that was all quite fun. Did the Silverstone Museum as well, which is good enough. I mean, it takes probably less than an hour to get around. It's just there's not that many F1 cars in there, but then obviously it's about the history of the whole circuit rather than just Formula One. And it does have segments on when it was an airfield and its military history, which is also quite interesting. So that's there, and that's free for the whole weekend. Normally you'd have to pay to go in. So yeah, they run a tight ship, and it's all done really well, I think.
A couple of things. The main stage was where I and again probably we can put a picture up here when I met Behrman in 23 and took a picture of him. It was just coming off of that main stage. I didn't go to the main stage at all during the weekend because again I really much I missed any of the kind of the driver appearances and the stuff outside of just the pure racing. And the other thing, what were we talking? What was the second point you mentioned? I forgot now.
The museum.
Museum, yeah, that was it. There weren't many F1 cars. I also went there because they were doing an exclusive kind of Behrman merch drop, and I got a shirt. That was it. I pretty much only went there for that. Yeah, there were a couple of F1 cars that I enjoyed, and like some memorabilia, and like I got to sit in a replica 1930s Grand Prix car, which was quite humorous watching me get in and out of. But other than that. I enjoyed it. I think it was generally a good weekend. I think if I was to go again, because obviously it would be this is my second time. There were a couple of things I do differently, but overall, pretty good weekend.
It's in shot now, but at the museum I bought the white Honda Red Bull livery car to go with the collection, and at the mega store I found a Cadillac cap because this is another thing about merchandise. First of all, the merchandise is insanely expensive. You'll get stores specifically for Ferrari and McLaren, but not for really any other teams, except for this one big mega store that has everything. But just a team shirt costs like £120, which is ridiculous. This costs £40 as Cadillac cap, and I think the whole weekend I saw maybe 2 people wearing Cadillac merch, and I was wondering, does it exist at all? Like, can you even get it yet? But apparently you can. I guess another thing, and well, this is, I guess, just advice anyone going, because you camped, obviously, which is a more relaxed way of doing it, if you don't mind the fact that you have to camp. But I drove in because I live relatively nearby. Getting in is fairly straightforward. Getting out is a fucking nightmare. Don't do what I did last year and think you can beat the traffic and leave straight away, because you will not, because I got stuck in the car park for an hour and a half before I eventually got out. Whereas I learned from that this time, so stay as late as you can each time. I mean, like yesterday, the race finished at 4:30. I left at 9 o'clock, and by then the car park was basically empty, and it was pretty much like plain sailing getting out. The other catch, of course, is that it costs parking is £150 a day to park in a massive field that is like a 20-minute walk from the circuit as well, which is. It's part of the ridiculous prices. I mean, when I went in 2011 and 2012, it cost, I think, £350 for the whole weekend, and that was with like roving grandstands and everything. And this cost me 1,600 this time. So it was around 2018, 2019 when suddenly the ticket prices just went through the roof, and people started complaining they'd be in the queue for tickets, and then they'd get past it, and suddenly the price would just double out of nowhere and stuff. But to be honest, if you can afford it, you have to go, because it's just if you have the means to go to any Grand Prix, you should go, because they're all amazing in their own way. I mean, I imagine going to somewhere like Abu Dhabi would be a very different experience from Silverstone. The atmosphere is probably non-existent, but then I imagine the facilities are, second to none, and the vibe, but it's just not going to have the enthusiasm or probably and all of that going with it.
Just say on the merch point, obviously there was one specific team and one specific driver I was searching for. There was there weren't just like the F1 megastore. There wasn't just the F1, the couple of not what should I call them, like little stalls across the circuit, but also stalls on entry to the circuit, unofficial like vendors, if you will. And I mean, that's what I got. I haven't got it with me now, but I got a Mercedes era Michael Schumacher cap, with the classic German company on the front. I don't know what Deutsche
Vermögensberatung. I don't know what it means, but yeah.
And obviously, I think part of the reason I bought it was partly because it's a Schumacher cap and it's quite cool, but also because it was silver. And what does silver do? It reflects light. So it means it reflected light away from me, and therefore I was like, it didn't work too well because I'm still a bit sunburned. But I did that. Also got an Alonso flag from, I think it was 2008 or 2009, the ING Renault days. So obviously I'm complicit in Crashgate. I did also think about getting one of the model cars. As much as I don't like it, it would have been cool to get a Damon Hill Arrows 97 car. Chose against it though because it was just. I did get a Greg Moore T-shirt though, and he's an IndyCar driver from the 90s. What else?
I mean, where is that vendor? Because this is one of my biggest gripes. I didn't see any like vintage merch stalls anywhere in the circuit. Whereas when I went in 2011 and 2012, they did have them because I bought like a BMW Sauber shirt when I went.
So when we came from the campsite, we walked down a road, if you will, and then just outside, I think it was the Vale entrance. Because obviously you know how you have the big like stairs that you use to get over the track. It's around where they are essentially. Obviously, we didn't use those. We just went to the gate and politely asked the security guys to let us through and find a way. But yeah, they're around there, and they're quite. I say the Greg Moore shirt I got was £20. The Schumacher hat was £20, and the Fernando Alonso flag was a tenner. So it's not obscene.
I mean, that's the thing. That's the stuff I want to get is the vintage stuff, and it's dirt cheap as well. Because I saw people with like mild 7 Renault jackets, and I'm like, I need one of those, and like. I didn't know that they even did these because on Jake Humphrey's podcast that he does now for racing, he was wearing a Monaco 2004 like Ocean's 12 Jaguar shirt, and those are insanely rare. I need to get one of those because they're just from one race.
Yeah, what this is a model car I've been searching for everywhere, and if anyone has it, I've seen small models of it, but I've not seen any big models of it. Is Behrman's Ferrari from Saudi in 24? I want to get that in like a big scale model, but I've not seen it anywhere. I'm not sure if they were ever created by any company.
Possibly not. I mean, big ones will be quite expensive because Brands Hatch has a merch store that has model cars, and they cost like over £100 and stuff. The little dinky ones behind me are like £10 or something.
Yeah.
So they're good enough. I can't. Yeah, I think that covers major points to bring up about being there.
Support races, I guess, because we don't usually.
Oh yeah, support races. I mean, yeah, we can talk about those in terms of the racing as well with these two. But I guess my main thing, you'd be amazed how loud they are. The F3 cars were really quite difficult. Like under a grandstand, you have to have earplugs because there's 30 of them, and they were noisier. Like F3 and F2 were noisier than Formula One.
Yes.
And we had F1 Academy, and those things pack a reasonable punch for little Formula 4 cars.
Yeah.
So they were interesting. I mean, the thing is, the F2. I paid figures with Formula 3. I don't know who half the drivers are. Formula 2, I can barely remember who's on the grid at the moment. Formula Academy, who cares? So yeah. But that there's plenty of. It's not just Formula 1. So obviously there's plenty of racing going on, and they did the historic car demonstrations as well. I thought I was waiting all weekend because they said they were going to do the McLaren MP420, and they just didn't. It just never went round.
I saw it in the garage, but they must not have fired it up.
It's the usual ones you see in the Grand Prix Masters. So they had, the 81 Arrows, the 75 Shadow, a couple of ground effect McLarens. They had an MP44 at least, but then I don't know why they decided to massacre the 2002 Jordan and the 08 Honda and put some bloody Ford V8 engine in it and just wrecked those cars because they sounded like tractors going by.
Yeah, because they were driving at 4 miles an hour. There were a couple of obscure ones. There was a Simtech, there was a Eurobrun, there was an LEC.
Is that what that was? I thought it was a Minardi, but that was a Eurobrun then.
It was Eurobrun.
Because I looked at it, I was thinking it's like the 87 Minardi or something. But yeah, the 95 Simtech was there. It was a few McLarens. Yeah, the MP44. John Watson actually drove his own MP41. Which is cool because he's like 80 years old now, so that's
he celebrated his 80th birthday earlier this year. They said on the tunnel.
Yeah, I think that was all. There was meant to be the 2009 BMW Sauber, but again, they didn't drive that because in the program it listed who was going to drive them, and they're all gentleman drivers. But those ones, the interesting ones, never went out on track. It's like you got to give us at least one V10, but they did
in 23, and they had like 50s cars. They had like a Cooper, and they had a 2003 Williams, I think.
In 2011, Alonso drove one of Ascari's Ferraris around the circuit as well. I remember seeing that, and he was like drifting it through Beckett's and stuff. So yeah, they do that stuff sometimes. Yeah, as also because you were in the grandstand all the time. Because it was very hot and all weekend and quite sunny and at least windy because it's a former airfield. So both of us got quite badly sunburnt. I was at least. I was under a grandstand for most of Sunday, so that was fine, although it was fucking freezing in the morning in that grandstand until the sun came out around midday. But yeah, last year was much more unpleasant because it kept going between rain and sun and back and forth all the time, and I was at chapel in an uncovered grandstand, so just had no protection from the weather. Okay, I think that covers all of that stuff. I think we need to bring the other two in and try and talk about the weekend itself. So I can't say I was expecting Leclerc to win this race. If that was quite an impressive performance in the end. I think that sends a big message to see him basically like shit all over Lewis at what by all accounts is Lewis's strongest track. Because Lewis, to go fastest in FP1, fastest in all three sprint qualifying, then loses the sprint, and then doesn't qualify, and then qualifies kind of badly, and then salvages third, but the pace isn't there. That was, I mean, Mercedes were still faster, but just as usual, everything went wrong in the race. But Ferrari themselves are in an interesting position, and I think Leclerc, I mean, he won't because it's him, but it would be nice to see if he can actually keep this momentum going in the future.
And how was the crowd reaction to Leclerc beating Hamilton, being competitive, winning? I mean, you said that the crowd was very, oh God, I don't remember the adjective, very calm and supportive of every driver.
Yeah, I mean, there are some Leclerc fans, obviously, not nearly as many as Lewis. I mean, everyone wanted Lewis to win, certainly, but they were happy enough to see. No, they were still happy enough to see Leclerc, and they applauded and everything. But they all wanted. I think people were annoyed because Lewis wasn't going to win, but also because of the way the race ended. And I think a lot of people were thinking, well, if they'd let them restart, he could have taken George and possibly Leclerc as well and won the race on the last lap. Um, but I think people just thought, well, I think they were thinking, to be honest, you have to hand it to him that he was, even without Lewis's penalty, he was nowhere near Leclerc on pace, and he was beaten in qualifying as well. So yeah, it was just better.
But how big was the cheer when he got the sprint pole? I'm gonna assume the whole.
Oh yeah, that was quite. Oh god, where was I for the sprint? I think I was at Luffield. I think that was quite significant. I mean, he only just got it by like 11 thousandths or whatever. I mean, in the 4 times I've been to Silverstone, none of those have been the races that Lewis has won, which has been interesting. So I haven't had that experience yet of being there when Lewis wins. He's usually actually none of them have been weekends where he's done particularly well, because 2011 and 2012, like he was like finished like 6th or 7th in those races. Last year was it was one of his better races in what was a pretty awful season, finishing 4th, and then this year obviously he started well and kind of got worse and worse as the weekend went on.
Yeah. I mean, I from the Lando stand, Leclerc's win was kind of so and so. There were a couple of cheers, but yeah, it was just kind of a celebratory rather than a kind of, oh my god, this is amazing, like just kind of clapping, standing up as the drivers came around, but nothing too special.
It could be that no one likes him here, but maybe the Leclerc effect is wearing off because he's not him, I think, is what people are realizing now.
And how was the reaction to the first 2-3 laps of the sprint where everything was going on?
I'm trying to remember the sprint. So I was watching the sprint race. I was watching from Chapel. The sprint was reasonably good, I think, because we could see that like it was Antonelli and Lewis just disappearing out front, and I think it was a bit muted because Antonelli won it in the end, and everyone was just like, "Ugh, okay." When he got past him, the thing is that I missed. This is the problem again about being in one place, is I missed a lot of the first corner drama that happened in both races, so I didn't know about Piastri broke something and Behrman was hit by Albon, and then there was something that happened in the sprint as well. But you miss all of that unless it happens at your corner. So yeah.
The TV screen that I could see pretty well, so I did see all of that sort of stuff. There were, I think Norris made a couple of overtakes at the start of the sprint. People went wild for that. Other than that, yeah, it was a kind of. It was as you'd expect from a crowd. It was just kind of, if something big happened, it was a woo, and if something didn't happen, it was just kind of a subdued reaction.
You make it sound like Imola was more fun. Because at least in Imola, when Antonelli last year he retired, the whole crowd, I was on the hillside at Stosa, and the whole hillside of the circuit cheered because Antonelli retiring at that moment would help Ferrari. And so when they saw Antonelli retiring, the whole hillside of Tosa broke in a cheer. So I know it's very unsportsmanlike. Absolutely.
I thought you were going to say they were cheering because they feel he's betrayed them by not joining Ferrari or something.
No. They cheered because he would help Ferrari's strategy.
And to be fair, he was 4 races into his career at that point, and like 10 years old. So,
the crowd work was good at the Lando stand. Anyway, there were countless Mexican waves throughout the weekend. There was many, like whenever there were breaks in between races or we were getting like prepared for races, they'd play like music through all the speakers, and the amount of times people joined in with lyrics to "Sweet Caroline" or "Hey Jude" or stuff like that was quite substantial. But yeah, as for the racing, because from the Lando stand anyway, it was just a case that if Lando did something good, it was a big cheer. If Lewis did something good, it was a big cheer. If anyone else did something good, it was an ooh or ah. But other than that, yeah, I think it was a bit.
I mean, that's another general point about the weekend is, like you say, they're very good at keeping people entertained between races because the big screens, there's like their own radio show for the race, and that woman was quite funny and entertaining. And yeah, they play a lot of the, for lack of better term, white people music, like Bohemian Rhapsody and Sweet Caroline and fucking Mr. Brightside and all of that kind of thing. Just the standard bangers. And what is that? Na 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 that gets played in every single sporting event that has ever happened has to have that blasted out on speakers. I mean, whoever wrote that has made buck off it. But yeah, I mean,
after the race, they had that the Mecca Bar song, the TikTok song. They had
I
that
don't know what that is, but yeah. I can't remember. They played loads of music the whole time. They were playing it all the way through the grid walk warm up and everything as well. But in the morning, on the Sunday, because I was there, I got into my grandstand seat at 8 a.m. So I got there quite early. It was 10% full when the Formula 3 race was happening, which is quite nice. But there was a little bit of a clap at the end for whoever won it. I think people appreciated, at least with Formula 2, that Solov was just on it all weekend by winning both the feature and the sprint race.
Yes.
But John Bennett is the only British driver in F2, and he somehow won the. Oh, and Kian Shields. I mean, Kian Shields is useless, but John Bennett somehow won the sprint in Austria, but otherwise he's just kind of so. So there's not a massive amount of attention. I don't really remember. Last year, I missed most of the Formula 3 and Formula 2 trying to get to my seat. 2011 and 2012, I cannot for the life of me remember the GP2 or GP3 races. Also because those were two of the shittest years for GP2 in terms of the drivers that you had on the grids. So it was I mean, you had Bianchi, but it was it was Gutierrez and Ericsson and Fabio Lima and Valsecchi and Rio Haryanto and that kind of thing. And yeah, I mean, F1 Academy at least had drama because one of them stalled at the start and almost got hit, and then there was a crash on the main straight that was just out of sight of where I was. But yeah, other than that, it was not much else to say. Yeah, if we try to go back to the race itself and the drivers and weekend, it is surprising really how well Leclerc did, to be honest, because I went into this expecting Lewis to win, and it's the fact that it was right there because everything went wrong. I mean, George just wasn't on the pace, and then Antonelli, his car broke again. Although I still don't know what exactly the problem was because it was very confusing because he pitted 3 times in a row, and then did finish the race. And so I don't know what was going on there, but at the moment it feels like this championship is going to be decided on reliability because he's going to keep having problems, and Lewis, as ever, is going to have a car that just never breaks down.
So the problem Antonelli had was as he went over a curb, the windshield on his front left broke. I don't know if you saw it, the windshield. It's basically a piece of carbon that is parallel to the wheel on the inside, and it should direct the airflow to the brake ducts and to the rest of the car. And the windshield initially broke, and it obstructed basically the suspension. So on one hand, the airflow on the left side of the car was completely screwed over, and on the other hand, the windshield was actually blocking the movement of the suspension. So the car was also turning left in a different way than it was turning right. And it pitted the first time, they changed the front wing because they thought it was a problem with the front wing. It wasn't. They went back on track. They noticed then that the windshield was broken, so they pitted him again. They the verb.
They
ripped away the windshield, whatever it was it on the car. they broke it away, send him back on the track, and then he was setting again respectable lap times, but without the windshield, he had 100 points of downforce less on the left side of his car, and also the brake cooling was screwed over.
Because he kept running wide at Brooklands, but only at Brooklands. So I thought the problem was the brakes or something, or because I think George had a slow puncture, so he had to pit, and I thought maybe something like that happened to Antonelli as well. So that's a really random, because you get people sometimes that'll hit a curb and it takes an end plate off, and they lose a bit of downforce, and they lose a few tenths per lap, but not when it's actually interfering with the suspension. That's a really specific problem to have.
And he didn't even really hit a curb. Like, he just the windshield broke off at the exit of Copse, where he just went onto the curbs like everyone else did, leaving only the two inside wheels on the track. And as he was going over the curb, it just randomly broke off. So it wasn't even that like managed to hit a sausage curb at the chicane or anything like that. It just randomly decided to break. So Cadillac levels of quality right there.
I mean, that's another thing, is that after the race, they let you do the track invasion. I thought I was going to do it for the podium, but they don't let the grandstands do it. So Vale Bank just suddenly went onto the track for the podium ceremony, which itself was really quite a spectacular sight to see that many people just suddenly descend on the track. But me and Nedzo got to go on afterwards, and you'll see those curbs are like sort of ridged. And when the cars drive over them, it sounds like an old like airplane engine. Has this really weird sound. Which is quite distinctive. So it's always obvious when they're going over the curbs and when they're trying to stay off them.
So, quite weird question. When the cars were riding over the curbs, were you so far away that the sound of the car riding over the curb arrived once the car left the curb?
No, I mean I wasn't that far away. No, it would all hit you at the same. It would all hit you at the same time. I mean, the sound of the cars is interesting. They do. I was quite impressed because FP1's the first time seeing them. They had this weird. It's kind of like a jet when they're, because on the Hangar Straight as they approach you, there's like this sort of wind rushing sound, kind of like a jet engine, that came with them, which I don't remember hearing last year. Because last year was my first time seeing hybrid cars in person, and I was fairly impressed by how they sounded. Compared to what I was expecting, because when I went in 2011 and 2012, it was the V8s, which sound, almost as good as the V10s. Yeah, so they were fairly, but they were noticeably quieter than both Formula 3 and Formula 2.
Yeah, that was definitely the case.
I had my earplugs out for the first lap and for the start because I wanted to hear that, even though I knew it was going to be quite bad because they have to pull up the turbo before the lights go out. But then I had earplugs on for the rest of the race.
You don't need earplugs for F1 cars. You don't.
Well, no. When you're outdoors, you do, because you were in an uncovered grandstand. When you're in a covered one and near the top, the sound just gets kind of trapped in.
I didn't last year, and I was all right.
I mean, I think for me, I thought I'll do this anyway, because the thing is, at first it's okay, but as they start to spread out, it becomes a pretty much constant stream of sound. Whereas the first stint, they're all more or less in one big group together, but eventually they do spread out, and it just becomes a very monotonous noise.
And neither one of you has spoken about it, so I'm guessing after some time the super clipping, the cars running out of battery just went unnoticed. I mean, it looked from the boards so obvious.
Yeah, I didn't notice that at all. I mean, where I was watching was things like Hangar Straight, Luffield, the main straight. Like, these are all acceleration zones that I wasn't. The thing is, you probably wouldn't even notice it if you were at like Stowe or something, probably because of like the Doppler effect. You probably couldn't hear it. But I know that was. This is something where, again, we're kind of out. I'm not really in the loop with all of that specific stuff when you're not watching it in TV. That the basically not braking at all from Luffield to Club, more or less, means that this was always going to be a big problem for clipping, and that was an issue because we saw more of the yo-yo racing, which we hadn't seen for the past few races, so that's kind of come back a bit. it's also the same way. Like I didn't know until I saw on YouTube that Lance Stroll was doing full lock going through Pops and Beckett's, which is interesting. I mean, Aston Martin were just abominably slow the entire weekend, but yeah, those are the little things that you kind of wish you could see. But yeah,
There were instances where I saw bigger differences in speed at Stowe, and I saw people overtaking each other. But we didn't hear like the classic super clipping noise, the downtrodden revs and that sort of stuff. Probably because there is just a lot of car noise, and if you have, let's say, two cars going by, one of them super clipping, one of them isn't, they're going to drown each other out, and you won't be able to properly see who's what and what's where, or hear who's what and what's where. But yeah, I didn't really hear much in the way of that. And although, yeah, there was a bit of yo-yo racing and people overtaking in places you don't usually see it, like into Cops, for example, it's fine, in my opinion. I've always said that it invites better racing, and that even if engine saving over one lap is slower and it's F1's always been about management, and I think that people need to stop whining generally, because it's not as bad as it was at the start of the year, and it's pretty much at a manageable level, even at a track like Silverstone, where what's it called, Lovefield, all the way to Stowe, is possibly one of, if not the worst example, probably not the worst example of lack of braking zones, lack of time, because there is a tiny bit of lifting and whatever you can do through Maggots and Beckett's and Chapel. But I would generally say that it was. I mean, obviously, yes, it'd be worse at Jeddah, in the last sector of Jeddah, or it'd be worse in other places, maybe. We're going to see Monza in a couple of races' time, and that's going to be entertaining. But I generally don't see an issue with the super clipping, at least not as we saw in something like, yeah, it was a bit. It was prominent, but it wasn't overly prominent, in my opinion.
So basically, the yo-yo racing was incredibly prominent on the broadcast. It looked like people were having different races and just happened to be on the same track. There was none of the maneuvers looked like actual genuine overtakes. It looked more like Le Mans in terms of like just different categories overtaking each other at 40, 50 kph deficits towards the end of the straights. And like you could clearly see that the Red Bull, for example, deployed on the start finish straight always, and other teams did it differently. So it looked very, very weird. So yeah, and then but interestingly, by the time the Grand Prix, the main race came around, most of the yo-yoing was gone. So I don't know if maybe the drivers were just using a bit more power manually than they were doing before, or what. But definitely, I don't know, something there was going on. And then I mean the onboards, they didn't really show many onboards during qualies. I can probably guess why. But yeah, all of them looked dreadful, to be honest. Especially Magos Beckett's Chapel. It's always, was the cars are completely on edge, just drivers are barely hanging on. And then this year is just and then it was kind of tragic to see. But yeah, if this is the absolute lowest it gets, and we still got entertaining racing sometimes. So I think it's not as bad as people make it out to be, but some things were a bit ridiculous this weekend.
I mean, this is something that's true for every Grand Prix I've been to, is that you can't really tell pace differences just from watching in a grandstand. Other than the only indication is that the fact the gaps get further and further away each lap. You'd have to be. I remember trying to do this when I went in like 2012 and HRT were there. You can't tell the difference, like unless you have a very, very keen eye, or you can hear that they're in a different gear or something. Because even now the engines all sound very similar, but when I used to go the V8s, they all had quite distinctive differences to them, and they don't really have that now as well. So yeah, you can't tell that off of one, especially in the for the race itself. Just seeing them accelerate out of Vale, it's like they all look the same more or less.
Right, should we go team by team then?
Yeah, I guess we did Ferrari, didn't we? So I guess we should Mercedes. I mean, like I said, I'm losing. I'm getting skeptical now that Kimi will take this title, and not for lack of trying, but simply because the car is just not going to hold up. To have had to have lost points twice now for races that, well, he probably could have won yesterday. He wouldn't have won in Spain, but at least he lost that 18 points. And George, we saw he lost points in Canada as well. So, and they've lost a lot of points, and he's still 40 points ahead. But it's gonna be a problem if they don't sort this out, because otherwise he has been driving like near flawlessly, and he gets a bit rattled sometimes, but he hasn't made any particularly significant errors. And his pace, other than his race starts, and his pace has been just really quite crushing, especially over George. Why that is, if it's just because he's supremely talented or George just doesn't like these cars, I don't know. But I don't think it's going to come that easy to them, this title.
21 years ago, young Mercedes-powered driver won a lot of races in dominant fashion, but then was pegged back by terrible reliability and lost the title. When fighting for that title, he was fighting against a rival of Fernando Alonso, and the reason why I say a rival of Fernando Alonso is because Fernando Alonso was often a rival of himself. Now, in 2026, we have a young Mercedes-powered driver who is fighting against a former rival of Fernando Alonso. The similarities are uncanny. I mean, whether Mercedes can rebuild, I don't know, because if this same issue that's befallen, or it's not the same issue that's befallen Kimi and George in previous races, but if the same issues that befell them in Spain, in Canada with George and Kimi keep reappearing, because obviously they can't. I think it's the case that they don't know what the issue is with the battery that caused the issues in those races, and they won't know for a while because you can't fly dodgy batteries or failed batteries across international waters in case of a kaboom incident. So they have to sail them, and sailing takes quite a while. Or taking them on a boat takes quite a while. So I don't know when they're gonna get those batteries back and be able to diagnose the issue, and then fix it. But if Mercedes and more importantly, I think it is going to be Kimi loses his title because of reliability, it would be a damn shame, because I think Kimi, when he's been on it, has been, and we can all say, has been absolutely stupendous this season. Mercedes. I think George did well. It was not a fantastic, absolutely amazing race, because obviously he was behind Kimi for the most part, and he essentially did what he used to do a couple of years ago, which is do nothing and end up in a good result, which is what he did. And he did get a couple of good points. Obviously, gained massive points on Kimi, gained points on Lewis, so a net gain for him in terms of championship aspirations. However, it's just really not good enough for a driver of his caliber to be just kind of pulling out good week, as we said. And we'll look back on the season preview in 6 months' time, maybe, I don't know, and we'll say George Russell, because we all said at the start George Russell is going to win this championship if Mercedes are the best, and he's finally got the chance, and he's just not. Like, I think people made comparisons last year between Lando Norris and Jenson Button, a driver who in 40 years' time will be known as a forgettable British champion who just won one season in a pretty good car and otherwise was good and at times great, but not truly elite. I think that comparison, especially considering how Norris has been performing this year, is more applicable to George, especially if he somehow wins his title over Kimi this season. That would be more applicable to George than it would be to Kimi, at least right now. But yeah, Mercedes, 2005 McLaren 2.0.
I mean, I guess, but the thing is that Kimi was behind for a lot of that season, whereas this Kimi is still ahead. I mean, 25 points on George and 32 2 on Lewis, so that's not too bad. Whereas with Raikkonen, he was behind on points for most of it because it was. I mean, so far it's only been two mechanical failures in 3 races, but like, I wanted Kimi to win, and I was just the whole race. I was counting the laps down, thinking something's going to go wrong, isn't it? And this time it wasn't anything to do with the engine or the battery. And in the sprint race, I was waiting for his engine to blow because he spent the entire sprint right on Lewis's arse, and I was like, that's not going to do the car any good. But that's another observation actually with these new cars. They can follow each other actually quite well. Go back, pre-ground effect, there was no chance of being able to stick that close for that long. So that's something. But it's just, I think also another tricky thing is the fact that when at the moment it's looking like Qatar and Abu Dhabi might go as well if everything in Iran doesn't resolve itself anytime soon. Which means that cuts another 2 races off, and that obviously, if that happens quite abruptly, that changes the championship position completely, with 50 points taken off that you could gain, and it could be a similar situation to 1955 when I've been trying to find this. I will find eventually, is because it was in between Silverstone and Monza that Fangio just became champion because they cancelled so many races. And I will find out when it was and when that moment happened, but it could be something like that for all we know.
Was that because of the Suez crisis, or was that 57?
No, that was because of the Le Mans disaster.
Oh, okay,
So
yeah.
The Suez crisis was like Spa and Zandvoort got cancelled for that, but that didn't really affect the championship. At 55, they cancelled like 5 races or something.
Going back to the race, I will quickly say, about 10 laps before the final safety car, I looked over and I said to my mum, just watch this space here, because it was when I think I don't know the exact, it might have been 10 laps before, it might have been slightly before, slightly after. And I said to my mum, because obviously Kimi had just pitted for new tyres and he was catching Charles at a rate of knots, and I said, just watch this space. Kimi is going to catch Charles. Charles and Kimi are going to crash into each other, and Lewis has become a 10-time winner at Silverstone just because that's how Lewis goes. Now, I wasn't that far off with that with that thing. I just got the wrong driver.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Kimi's car broke, and then for me, Leclerc's car also breaking and Lewis winning the race because the 2 cars in front of him broke down sounded very plausible in my head.
Yeah.
Because that has happened before with him, and because as I said, in nearly 400 races, he's had 12 mechanical failures in races. So and that's less than 1 a season. Like it's never been a problem for him in the way that it has for every other driver in this sport. Yeah, but as it is, I think Ferrari, the pace isn't really quite there still, as we saw in the race. I think qualifying is very, very close, but they just can't. The tyres and the energy management, they're just not on the level of Mercedes at the moment. And with that Adwo thing, both of them have upgrades to bring over Red Bull, who seem to have a lot of problems with their engine at the moment. So that will probably help Mercedes even further. But I think, yeah, everyone being the British media and the British fans suddenly got very carried away after Lewis won in Spain, even though a large part of that win came to him from Kimi breaking down again, George being useless, Leclerc being useless, and a free pit stop from another perfectly timed virtual safety car. But it's like, I don't think that title, or if it does happen, it's going to be George being useless and Kimi breaking down all the time, basically.
I don't know what season this would be like if it's the case where, because I think Kimi's clearly the standout driver of the top 2 teams. I think that Lewis is obviously very consistent and has a very high peak. Charles has a very high peak but isn't very consistent, and George has a very high peak but is inconsistent. We reached a season where all of the top 4 drivers were very good in points, but 3 of them were, or 2 of them were inconsistent, and 2 of them were sort of consistent, but and 1 of them didn't really exercise all their points at all given points at time. But yeah, I'd say 2010. Yeah, Vettel was not consistent but very fast. Webber was very fast but also not consistent. Alonso was kind of consistent but not as fast as the 2. And then I guess Hamilton was sort of consistent, and Button was just at times great, but also sometimes in the 7th pits of hell with how unlucky he was.
I mean, with the 2010, in that analogy, I think Vettel is Kimi.
Yes.
Because, I mean, okay, there were some big honkers in Istanbul and Spa, but that car was supremely fast, and he got pole position at almost every round, but it just broke down constantly. And so he really should have won the title a couple of races early. Obviously, Alonso did work wonders in that Ferrari, but there was the odd race like Silverstone where the car was terrible, and Turkey as well. It was just a midfielder. But yeah, Webber threw the championship away in Korea. Lewis crashed out crashed into other drivers in Singapore and Monza. Without that, he could have been the champion as well.
Yes.
But yeah, it wasn't for them. For Vettel, reliability was a factor, but for the rest of them, it was them making their own mistakes or having a car that just wasn't very good.
That's a very good point.
And like the analogy, and people tried this last year as well. The analogy with 2007 and 1986 doesn't really work because in all 3 of those, the person that won was the best driver anyway. They just had a worse car. And in this case, Kimi is driving better than everyone else, but the car is just breaking down a lot, rather than it's just slower, but because the 2 in front are making mistakes and tripping over each other, that allows them to come through.
Yes. I have a feeling that I'll let Ace get to his afterwards, but I have a feeling that obviously we talk about the benefits of some cars and others. I'm trying to think, because in the remaining portion of the calendar, we've got, I don't even know the exact order of these races, so it's going to be slightly wrong. We've got Hungary, which is very much a case of not much top speed. It's mostly acceleration zones, which is where Ferrari are good. It's got Spa, which although it has a very, very, very long straight, also has a middle sector, which is very good. Actually, it's got 2 very, very long straight sections, if you will.
Spa's going to be clipping City, isn't it? With those straights and...
Oh yeah, from Paul Frere to Les Combes, you have 1 major stopping point. Yeah, that's going to be fun, watching drivers go Eau Rouge, and some of them are conserving and some of them aren't. Monza, which is a Mercedes track compared to Mercedes and Ferrari. Singapore is a Ferrari track. Why did I go Suzuka? I'm still back in the 2010s. I nearly said Korea. I'm so glad I didn't.
Baku's coming up. That's going to be... That and Monza are the ones I most want to see, partly because they're good races, but also because the clipping is going to be off the charts. Baku is actually... I used to hate it. I actually love that track. And now
it's a modern classic, Baku is. It is.
Yeah, the race is slap. It reminds me of like Detroit and Long Beach and everything. I think it's good.
Yeah. And then you've got tracks like Brazil will probably be a Mercedes track. Qatar will be a Ferrari track. This is if the current performance stays as it is with the characteristics of each car staying as it is. Abu Dhabi, I think, will be a Ferrari track because
Vegas is going to be abominable for clipping with that straight as well.
Yeah.
And also the first sector at Kota, just forget about it with those S's.
To be honest, can you imagine if they did what they did in 1994 and just added chicanes so that drivers wouldn't get super clipping, like in the middle of the Las Vegas Strip without a chicane?
It's gonna. I mean, the back straight at Kota and the strip on Vegas, it's gonna be impossible to defend. It's gonna be like DRS times 100.
To be fair though, Kota, you have the entire S section and you have a tiny short chute before you get to there. You could save up quite a lot of battery there, and then obviously then at the end of that long straight going into turn 12, you then have another winding section where you can just save a bunch of energy for the next. I think Kota will be fine because there's a lot of energy saving abilities. But yeah, Vegas before the long straight, you have another semi long straight and not many big braking points. So that will be. It's a case of they'll just they'll most likely, and this will probably be an unpopular choice, but they'll just have to keep dropping the maximum deploy. I don't know what it's at now, whether it's at 5 megajoules, 6 megajoules, but you're dropping down to 4, even 3, just to make sure there's no super clipping, and it would probably slow the cars down, but you'd already have to do that.
They I mean Zandvoort and Hungary will be similar to Monaco. It's just going to be a non-factor. I mean, I'm hoping they won't just disable overtaking mode on safety reasons, but those circuits they won't have any problems. It might actually help them with overtaking, though, is the thing, because of that. So hopefully those are good ones.
Yes. Ace wanted to jump in. I think he's been. I think he's. Yeah, we can let him in.
Yeah.
Yeah, the comparison with this season to other season, I was thinking of 1998. You had McLaren and Ferrari, top two teams winning every race, and both had, clearly not quite Ferrari, both had fair lineups with 4 drivers having the possibility to win a race every weekend. Clearly, Schumacher was number 1 driver, Nirvana was number 2, but...
What, you say 1988?
1998, he said.
No, okay, yeah, 98, yeah. Because I mean,
Schumacher and Alpine were famous Ferrari drivers in 1988. I'll have you know.
Yeah, because you mentioned I heard 88, and I was thinking, okay, well, yeah, Senna crashed, and like, Prost had a problem in Monza, and Senna got taken out by Schlesser, but otherwise that car was supreme everywhere. 98, yeah, obviously the Ferrari was the slower car, but you know Schumacher was working wonders and keeping them on the pace with McLaren. But yeah,
should we move on to the rest of the teams because we've just like
we've been going for like an hour, and we're like because we spent ages talking about the toilets are crap, but the food is good.
Can I quickly talk a bit about Mercedes because
Mm-hmm.
they had something interesting going on after I think the sprint race or the main quali. Russell openly complained that his car is having some issues, and for some reason he's a bit slower on the straights than Antonelli, despite using the same setup. And that's just what he said. And the telemetry that we got confirmed this. So he does indeed have a problem of some sort. That means he's losing about 2 to 2.5 tenths a lap, especially in quali, compared to Antonelli. And this has already been the case in Austria. And they tried fixing it with the powertrain, all of that, trying to see if he has an issue there. And for the next race, he's getting a new battery, I think. And if that doesn't fix it, he's probably going to have to get a new chassis because maybe there's some undiagnosed chassis problem he has. So this whole weekend and the week before, he's been struggling with some sort of issue that is costing him lap time. So I think he's fairly. If that really is the case and he's losing that much time because of that, he's fairly is basically on par with Antonelli. But then also with just how much bad luck Antonelli has had in these recent weeks, I think it would be reasonable to say that luck is no longer something that you can blame Antonelli's point lead on. That like, oh, Russell was just unlucky, because Antonelli has been about as unlucky over the season. And then for Ferrari, I just quickly want to say that I don't think there was a driver who needed a victory more on the grid than Charles Leclerc. And so, I'm glad that he did, because he was getting really spiraling into a bad place. So maybe he can now step up next to Hamilton, and then things can be amazing from that point on.
It is a bit tragic that this is his first win in 2 years. How infrequent they are compared to the amount of bloody pole positions he gets. With
what
George,
track was his last win at in 24?
It was it Monza or was it Mexico? No. Oh no, it was was it Kota? Was it Kota?
It might have been Kota.
I think it was Kota.
What I was going to say was Ollie Behrman has become a full-time F1 driver and a threat for a Ferrari seat in the time that it's taken Charles Leclerc to win a race.
Yeah, it's like, because again he got what two wins in 2019, 3 in 22, and then another 3.
Did he get one in 21?
He was supposed to win Monaco until he crashed in qualifying.
This
No,
was
he
his
didn't win
ninth
any.
He was
career
supposed
run.
to win the British Grand Prix, but then Hamilton only got a 10-second penalty for
Yeah,
merging
yeah.
first.
What? Ace knows. He's got his hand up. He'll know. Like,
Just one fun fact. This year, Charles has more wins than he has balls.
Wow.
yeah, I suppose he hasn't got a pole yet because last year he got the pole in Hungary, and Ferrari strategy happened, and so just went nowhere. 24. That was I mean, I remember that was a supreme season. I mean, it was Silverstone and Canada where Ferrari did their usual spiel when the rain came out. Without those two races, he'd have been just in the title fight. And he had some. I mean, Monza was probably his best win as well. But it's so infrequent. But yeah, he really did need this. And I think, yeah, well, if you're like me, you want to see him, take it to Lewis, and I think it just makes it more interesting if he can get up in that fight as well. But with George, like, we hear this a lot, especially in Formula 2. People complain, oh, my chassis cracked, or my chassis broken, or my engine's broken, and this is why everything's going wrong. And it's like, if that's the case, why can't that just be fixed in between a race? Because we saw, like, was it Hungary 2020? Max hit the wall on the way to the grid. They fixed that car in 15 minutes, just changed the suspension arms. You've got, 2 weeks to uncrack I don't know, do something like that. Like, it's like, it's a problem, but you're just going to say, oh, no, we can't fix it for like 6 months or whatever. So you're just going to have to suck it up. Like, is that really the case, or is it just making an excuse or whatever? Because it should be easy. I mean, Paul di Resta had pulled this one as well, and I think he claims it was the reason that he was turned down offers by Ferrari and Mercedes in 2013.
I think there's this with his hand gestures. Part of it is money and the fact that they go over the cost cap, but I'm assuming also it is probably because saying that you can replace a suspension arm in 10 minutes is the same as a chassis is kind of ridiculous, because a chassis is literally you put everything on the chassis to make the Formula 1 car. You take away the chassis, you don't have a Formula 1 car. If you have a Lego set and you have a big, like, let's say a big, like, 8x8 square, and you place a load of Lego pieces on it, and then you make a nice little structure, and then you take away the 8x8 piece on the bottom, the pieces, everything falls apart. So
but why is just build another one? Like, the tub is, I get, obviously, they're very advanced pieces of kit, but the tub itself it's the largest part of the car, but it's still relatively small. Like, is carbon fiber particularly difficult to source or to work with, or can't you just make another tub if that's where the problem is? Like,
a brand new chassis will likely cost several million pounds, euros, dollars, and teams aren't going to do that, especially someone like Mercedes, aren't going to do that for a couple of tenths advantage for one driver and risk going over the cost cap. I think that's what it is. So if it's towards the end of the year and he's still having these issues, and they know it's probably not something that they've already tried to weed out, then that'll probably be what they do. I was going to make some other point, but I've kind of... Oh, yeah. If Ferrari want to get a pole in 2026, instead of doing anything on the track, they could always just draft in Robert Kubica as a reserve driver.
oh, okay. Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Another possible reason why they don't just make a new chassis is the leading time. I would assume it takes a month to build a chassis from scratch. It's not
Well,
a
all
job
the more
you
reason to
can do
get started on it as soon as possible, then. Yeah. But yeah, we'll see. We need to move on to the other teams. Red Bull. Okay. Well, earlier on, Will Buxton did his usual bullshit of, oh, I've just heard this news, and if it's true, it's fucking amazing. And everyone thought it was going to be Max has activated the performance clause in his contract and is joining McLaren. No, instead it's bloody Scott Dixon's moving to Arrow McLaren in IndyCar. That's the massive news now. But yeah, Max is in a position similar to Vettel in 2014 where he can actually activate that performance clause because he can't get second in the championship by the summer break anymore. And yeah, he was pretty miffed because yesterday, I mean, he was catching Lewis. He could have got that podium, and then the car just failed again, like we've seen. Well, we've seen it in Australia. It happened somewhere else as well. well, no, in Austria as well. Obviously, these
China.
mechanical things and China, just all of that. So you can understand he's a bit miffed because obviously he's not fighting for this title. Also, I imagine it is getting to him that Hadjar is actually doing quite well compared to his previous teammates. I'm quite impressed. I mean, he outqualified him. I mean, how often do we see Max outqualified by his teammate in a fair fight? That doesn't happen that often. In the race, he was slow. I mean, Hadjar was being a bit of a terrorist in the sprint and the main race, but you know, he's kind of getting into a rhythm and doing quite well now.
This was the first time Verstappen lost to his Red Bull teammate at Silverstone in qualifying.
Hmm.
None of his other teammates ever managed to outqualify him here.
It's probably the first time he's been outqualified since like 2023 as well by his
2024
teammate, I
Baku.
imagine.
2024 Baku, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah. I forget that because Sergio was supposed to beat him and then decided to crash into sides on the last lap.
Yeah. What this spells out for me, Hadjar being faster than Verstappen, it spells one of two things. Either Verstappen isn't confident or doesn't want to direct the development of this car, or this car isn't very well developed, because we saw in 2022 and some parts, 2022 especially, Perez could at times match or get very close to Verstappen, and but as soon as the car was tuned to Max's preferences, by the end of the year, he fell back. So, because he kept making it sharper, and he kept making it sharper, and he kept making it sharper, and it was just unhandleable. So either we're halfway through the season, Max had decided this car is utter dog shit. I'm not trying to develop this. I'm not trying to make it sharper. I'm not trying to keep going down this road. I want to try and start something fresh for 2027. Either that, he's completely demoralised, so he doesn't want to do any development work, and he is going to McLaren or whatever. Or, the car has been developed in that path, and it's still not sharp enough, which also means that it's just not very good. Or a fourth option, Hadjar is just really good. I don't think that's the case. I think this could be a one in a. Even if Hadjar is really good, I think this is a one in a 2, 1 in 3 performance from him. Like, you're only going to get this one every 2 weekends, one every 3 weekends, one every 4 weekends. I don't think we're going to see this on a consistent basis. If we do, fair enough, and he deserves all the plaudits he can get for matching Verstappen or beating Verstappen. But I don't think it's going to last. I think that, again, there were times where Perez did this, and then people would say, "Oh my God, he deserves a seat. He's finally done it." And then he'll get 17th for next week, and then people are like, "Okay, well, he deserves to be thrown into the sun." Other newspapers are available, obviously, not just the Sun, but you get what I mean. But Verstappen out of the race, and Hadjar doing reasonably well, or very well, in fact. Red Bull are just kind of nowhere. Initially, I thought after Austria that McLaren were the team that were kind of in the middle of nowhere. Now it seems like Red Bull are in the middle of nowhere with McLaren. I don't know. I don't know what the development tree looks like, or what the development order looks like. It's probably just some kind of, I don't know what.
To Red Bull, I just have to say that wherever they qualify, you have to add 2 to that to get their result at turn 1, because their starts are still terrible. They still always lose out to the row behind them. Best case scenario, and then Hadjar in the sprint, for example, had a terrible start, and then in recovering he couldn't beat I think it was Lawson. So yeah, it's just still the Red Bull is just awful at that. And seemingly the Vizarbe has managed to fix this. They're having fairly regular or even good starts. So I don't know how Red Bull still haven't found a solution to not being able to start the race. But yeah, that's that. And yeah, Hadjar is doing amazing. He's just been doing a very solid job of when everyone is paying attention to the failures of the Red Bull around Verstappen. He just kind of hiding away and not getting any attention, and he seems to be doing really well through this period of time. So maybe this lack of pressure that literally nobody cares about him because they're not fighting for the championship. His teammate is having all of the drama in the world. He can just sort of knuckle down in this less stressful environment, probably.
Thing is, if Austria hadn't happened, I'd be more thinking, yeah, Max is just going to quit. But that was a really good weekend, and he almost won the race. This ended up being a bit of a, I guess, back to regular schedule programming. I suppose I can see he's getting sick of the car being funny on him more and more when it hasn't really for a few years. I mean, in the early part of his career, that their cars were breaking down constantly, but then he's had this run of absolutely amazing cars, and now suddenly it's all going wrong again. You can see him. I think you can see him getting pissed off. Also, the fact that he keeps trying to. I don't know if he's just trying to troll the British media by always talking about quitting and retiring, and that he doesn't really need to do this anymore. Maybe he will just give up, because I think we have this expectation that everyone is going to do an Alonso and go into their mid-40s, but not all of them want to do that necessarily. So maybe it will be sooner rather than later. But yeah, then they this weekend they just weren't there, but maybe in Hungary it'd be better. McLaren, I kept getting them mixed up with Cadillac because they had their special livery, which, to be fair, looked very nice on track. Well, Lando had, plenty of support from the fans and all of that. He salvaged the race in the end, even though the pace wasn't there. Oscar was a train wreck, though. So even though most of the rest of the season, when he's actually started the races, he's been better than Lando. But yeah, didn't really go their way, and they knew this. I mean, in the interviews they did on the main stage, they were like, "Yeah, they were joking, yeah, we're gonna win tomorrow and stuff," and because they just know they're just not there. And I wouldn't mind seeing them get a bit closer. If them and Red Bull can get up, we suddenly have a 4-way fight, but that almost never happens, to be honest.
I will say this: Piastri recovered well. He was down right at the back and then recovered to like 11th. So
yeah, he was being cheered every lap when he went past. And
that was also happening in the Lando stand, which I was surprised at.
I mean, people do. They were doing it a bit with Albon. It's anyone that's fallen back and is trying to catch up. But with him, I think there was a very big cheer because he passed both the Aston Martins on the same lap. And then after that, I kind of got a bit confusing about where he was in the pack. But even with the safety car, was he just 11th? It wasn't going to happen for him, unfortunately.
Valiant effort, though.
Yeah.
The McLaren really did look like the Cadillacs. Even after watching everything, and even towards the end of the race, I was like, which Cadillac is getting lapped so early? Like, why is there a Cadillac among the Mercedes and then the McLarens and all of that? Because I don't know. Like, I feel like they should have some type of rule that like the cars have to look like at least noticeably different from each other, even in the case of special liveries, just because it was really confusing. And I am definitely within like the top 0.5% of Formula One fans, and if it takes me a second to register that, well, that's actually not a Cadillac, then I imagine more casual viewers are having an absolute nightmare with trying to figure out who is where, because it just looks so similar. So I don't know, I think there should be some regulation about that.
I mean, I did have this issue in 2012. From a distance, I was getting the McLarens and HRTs mixed up when I was at Silverstone.
I will say to anyone talking about liveries, tell that to McLaren and Alfa Romeo in 1982. With their
that was bullshit.
But I will also, there was also something else I was going to say, and I've now forgotten what it was. Oh, for goodness sake! Give me a second. No, it's gone. Someone else say something.
So another weekend where Norris has beaten Piastri. Very good for him.
And I've still not got... Someone keep going without me now.
You'd think that would be good, considering he's the defending champion, and yeah.
Yeah, but he was not really that worthy of a champion. So the fact that he's doing good this year is actually very good for him being a world champion. Otherwise, people would be saying he's truly the worst world champion ever.
But otherwise, I mean, to be honest, the performance difference between him and Piastri is not that big, to be honest, and it wasn't that big last year either. They're quite similar overall.
Getting confused over cars. It's similar to what I've remembered the thing now. It's similar to what back when everyone used to broadcast classic races when when weekends weren't on like live race weekends, which is quite a lot back in the mid to late 2010s. I remember I used to always, whenever there was a race from like 2010 or 2011. Obviously, you have the timing ticker at the bottom, which was like it'd show the top 7, and then it'd be like 7th to 13th, and then it'd be like 14th to 21st.
I hated that. Yeah.
But what I used to always do is, whenever I was like watching it when I was younger, obviously, I'd be like, "Why is Alonso down in 14th?" And everyone else, "Oh, it's Algeswari," and I just haven't seen it because the ALO and ALG look very similar when you just glance over it.
We had although he wasn't there in 2015, we had Vez and Ver at one point, which had been for Vern and for Verstappen, but
yeah,
that can't have been for Vern.
I think what they do is it's the same with like car numbers, where they leave it 2 years just in case the guy comes back, and then after that they just they let whoever it is take over the codes. It's like I'm surprised that there's not been any other apart from the Schumachers. There's been no exceptions because MSC shouldn't be the free letter code. It should be SCH, but everyone's just gone MSC for Mick and Michael Schumacher.
Well, that was because of obviously they had to because of Ralph.
Yeah.
So they had little. How would they have done this with like if they'd had it at the time with Jarier and Jabouille?
JAB.
Oh, I guess that rather than.
I know what you mean now. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Who else can you think of?
There are like 5 different Taylors in the 50s and 60s, weren't there?
Yes, I think there was 4 of them who competed in the same race, and none of them were related.
Yeah, and half of them died in races.
So it'd be like HTA for Henry Taylor. It'd be TTA for Trevor Taylor, stuff like that. I'm guessing so. It's the same formula.
Yeah, I think that's enough hypothetical acronyms for now. Is the next team would be Racing Bulls, wouldn't it? Okay, their cars are very pretty in real life. I will say that they look amazing. And they seem to drive amazing as well because their pace was clearly the front of the midfield. They kept hinting at going fastest in qualifying sessions, then suddenly end up being like a second off. But yeah, Lawson Lindblad, they were close together. They ran in a pair the whole race. They were leading the midfield in the sprint and the main race. Double points. They're doing quite well.
Lawson's doing superbly, and he's still probably going to lose his seat. Which is the annoying thing.
Because Solov is gonna have to come in next year. The way he's just demolishing everybody in
unless he has an unfortunate crumble in the rest of the year, that does look the case. But the thing is also, I think Lawson could easily go somewhere else, whether it be Haas or another team. I think there is a space on the grid for him because he's a very capable driver. And although I don't think he can become anything truly generational, because that's what Red Bull are looking for. VCOB is not to have 2 really good drivers; is to have generational talents like Lindblad, like what they hope Solov might be. And Lawson isn't a generational talent, so they're going to throw him out regardless of how well he's doing. That team is not to get the best results. That team is to get the best young drivers. He could easily be like a Jean-Eric Vergne 2.0, a driver who is extraordinarily capable, could get whatever results he wanted. He could beat whoever he wanted, and yet he was still going to get booted out of that team, regardless of how much he beat Ricciardo, regardless of how much he beat Kvyat. He still got booted out unfairly. When you could argue that he could have easily done a good job in a Red Bull or whatever, and he's done well in every single series he's ever done since he left Formula One. Lawson could easily become that kind of driver.
I think unless something major happens and Verstappen leaves, I just don't see either of them getting kicked. Just because Lawson has been doing so well, and I mean he is beating Lindblad, if not by a big margin, he still is, and Lindblad is obviously still incredibly new and young. I think unless someone else is willing to take on Solov, he will have to wait. Just because although yes, they typically kick these drivers out. Lindblad has shown potential, but he's still like clearly not there. And Lawson is clearly doing real well. So unless maybe Albon gets booted and they replace Albon with Lawson at Williams, or something like that happens, Hülkenberg retires or something similar to that. I just don't think they are getting replaced with any of that. Especially Lawson managed to beat Hajar in the sprint, so we had a sprint race where the top 4 teams didn't get all the points, which is incredible. And then, but also for all qualifying sessions, we had the exact same top 10, just because they are clearly the 5th fastest team, and nobody can beat them. So there's also that. It's kind of difficult to stand out for them, I think, because clearly the car cannot compete with the top 4, but then they are expected to beat everyone else. So they really are in no man's land, kind of like with Aston Martin.
I'm assuming you mean by the exact same top 10 in qualifying, you mean the exact same drivers, not the exact same order of drivers.
Yeah, of course. Just the exact same set of drivers who made it through to Q3. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and they finished in the dreaded position of every single Gen Alpha kid's favorite meme, unfortunately. So yeah, we also had this finally this year, so they can cross that off their list, I guess.
Yeah. Also, obviously, if Solov were to come on Formula One grid, it'll be another new nationality on the grid. I don't think there's ever been any Bulgarian who's ever got close to a Formula One seat. Like even in Formula 2 or Formula 3, I don't think there's ever been anyone.
I can't name a single one. I mean, I'm looking at that in the Formula 3 standings now, and he's got 6 wins, and he's 16 points ahead of Mini. I mean, some of them are so inconsistent. Like Belinsky has got points in most races, but is 16th in the standings. And it really is all over the place. I only just noticed because Formula 3, it was Matteo. That was quite a good race, the feature race. Matteo De Parlo won it, and then because it's Formula 3, he got disqualified. So some Polish guy has the win, and
Mateusz Gladish,
who I didn't even know beat Freddie Slater, because Freddie Slater's the only one anyone. I mean, he's got main character energy, and he'll be in Formula 1 in like 3 or 4 years probably.
Yeah.
But Ugo Ugochukwu is leading, but he is way too tall to do Formula 1. They're never going to fit him inside a car, so he's a write-off. Brad Benavidez went back and then pulled out in Monaco and hasn't been back since for some reason, and then it's
because he injured his back.
Right, okay.
Broke his vertebrae, I think.
And then Matteo De Paulo, he's been in the 20s and then suddenly finishes 4th at Silverstone and then wins the feature race before getting disqualified. Like, where did that come from? Like, the inconsistency is just off the charts in Formula 2 and Formula 3. It's worse than Formula E for that.
There was also in the sprint race referee, I'm not sure if you saw it, but Yavan David, the Sri Lankan driver, put on possibly the greatest defensive performance I've ever seen. It was genuinely iconic. The way he bags cars back up into each other so that they fought between each other and then fended off every single shot. And didn't even, unlike with most defensive drivers you see nowadays, where you see at least one dodgy or dirty or borderline, I mean, there was nothing. He drove perfectly the entire way and got a very deserved second place.
I mean, I was watching that from Brooklands. On the first lap, I saw a move for the lead at Brooklands. But I was half paying attention because it was on Saturday morning, and also because I just don't know anyone in Formula 3. I don't pay nearly enough attention to it this year to know who's there and who's interesting and who isn't or whatever. But yeah.
Yeah, and Yavan David did that in the AIX. And I mean, if you ask any F3 aficionado, they will all say that the worst car on the grid by far is the AIX.
But again, this is another one where he's been racing in the 20s and then suddenly gets a podium and 7th this weekend. Like, where did that come from? Like, why is it suddenly amazing?
I don't know.
I mean, to be fair to Ugochukwu, he scored points in all but 2 races so far, which is more than anyone else. Everyone else has been very... Well, him and Slater have got the most points finishes.
Also, I will say, by the way, you said that he was too tall to get in, and everyone got. He has done tests with Alpine. I think that if he was truly, like, if he was to win Formula 3 and then Formula 2 back to back, they would find a way to put him in a Formula 1 car, and it would be funny watching him alongside whoever the smallest driver is now because Tsunoda's gone. Probably I
Alonso
don't know,
probably, or
maybe
Hajar.
Alonso.
It could be Alonso, actually. I think it is Alonso, actually, the shortest
It is
driver now.
Alonso. 167, 5, 5.
That's 5'5", and
also he's getting older, so he's
Ugochukwu-
going to shrink.
The thing is, Ugochukwu, I've never found a source on it, but he looks probably at least 6'7", 6'8", something like that.
They say he's 6'5",
Right.
which is about 195 for Europeans, I think.
Yeah.
194, 195.
I think
Yeah,
he looks
but I
bigger
mean-
than he is because the rest of the drivers are quite small. So
Yeah, and then also like all the other drivers are like 17, 18, so they still probably grow a bit.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But even so,
It-
you don't really want to be above about 5'8" as a racing driver. It's not good to be. It's like being a jockey. You want to keep it small.
Well, I mean,
if you
more than
can.
half the grid is above 5'8", so I think like 6'2" is kind of like as far as it could go realistically, and then above that you're gonna have real problems with
I mean,
how
they
tall
had
you are.
in Silverstone Museum, they had some of the drivers like overalls on display from different eras, and it was like when you see like, oh, here's the dresses that Jane Austen wore, and it's this absolutely tiny little dress because back then their diet was so bad that they were like 4 foot tall and everything, and you can realize how they are very very small, very trim. A lot of the drivers, other than like Behrman and Ocon and Hulkenberg, were very tall, but yeah.
Right, which team's next?
I think it's Audi because Bortoletto like bullshitted his way to 8th place or whatever. Well, Hulkenberg had the gearbox broke. They still seem to have problems with their cars, but otherwise they're definitely 6th fastest. Really, like not quite good enough for Q3. And I mean, I just can't be asked. I don't really care that much for them and their car. I hate the livery. Like they've put no effort into that as well. So yeah.
I think Hülkenberg is just getting like some sort of cosmic punishment for breaking his podium curse last year, because this year every single race he's either 11th or has the chance to score points, and then something comically bad happens to him, or just his engine shuts down. Because if he just nothing bad happened to him, he surely would have scored at least a point. And once again, his curse strikes, like the gravel hit his kill switch in Spain or something like that. Just always happens to him. And once again, this is more of a standard Audi issue, but still, the race where his teammate got 8th despite doing nothing, and Hülkenberg definitely could have gotten at least 10th, his car died. So once again, just unbelievably unlucky. So yeah, I feel really sorry for him.
He's behind Alonso in the standings now as well.
No, but seriously, it's incredible how unlucky he's been. So, first race, which was the only chance in how many months Audi had to score points, he didn't start. Bortoletto got 9th place. Then he was faster than Bortoletto basically the entire season up until Austria, and for some reason he never scored. And now the last 2 races is Bortoletto who's faster. And it's Bortoletto who gets the first chance to score points again. It's frankly laughable, the misfortune Hülkenberg has had this year.
And again, it's like he can only be around for so long. I mean, for him at least, he's not like Alonso in it's like, I used to have amazing cars and win championships. Why am I putting up with this? It's like, well, every car I've driven in my life has been like this, so I guess I'm used to putting up with it. Like he's never like at least Checo went to Red Bull and he had that year at McLaren. Like Hulkenberg has never had a shoe in at a front running team. It's just been midfield teams his entire career. He's become. It's like being like Piercarlo Ginzani, who spent 7 years with the Zella or something. It's just not going anywhere. And again, he's almost 40 now. He's got kids. He'll get. I mean, who's in the Audi? They've got. Isn't Freddie Slater one of their juniors, or there's somebody in the works that they can throw in probably if well, Paul Aaron keeps doing FP1 for them even though he's an Alpine junior. So maybe they'll just steal him when Hulkenberg wants to go.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's talk about. I guess we'll talk about Alpine themselves. Okay, so Colapinto had quite a good recovery drive. He went out in Q1. Didn't he get blocked? I think he got blocked by somebody, or he had that big spin at Beckett's. Went out in Q1, but then finished the race in 9th. Gasly got 10th. Gasly was a bit more consistent with his weekend. But yeah, I guess they're mostly battling Audi and to a lesser extent VCarb at the moment.
Yeah, there was, from what I heard, that Gasly had a slow pit stop and so lost the position to Colapinto. Otherwise, he would have finished ahead of him.
Okay. Well, Haas. Maybe we can talk a bit more about Haas. Bear Boy, go.
So in the sprint, I believe Ocon outqualified Berman just, and then I can't remember what happened in the sprint. To be honest, I don't really remember much what happened, but I do remember in the main qualifying session, Berman got into Q2, Ocon didn't, and then at the start, Berman got rammed by Alex Antichrist and ruined the first part of his race. Obviously, he came out. I'm not sure if he fell behind the Astons. He might have done, but he was definitely behind the 2 Cadillacs. He swiftly dealt with Bottas because, as we know, Bottas has the racecraft and the wherewithal of a wet paper towel in 2026 and just in general. But when he got to Perez, he spent at least 10 laps just stuck behind him. I'm not sure if it was he had loads of pace but he couldn't get past him, or he didn't have much pace and he couldn't get past him. But then there was a VS. Was it a VSC or a full? It was a VSC that came out. Perez pitted as the VSC came out, but then the VSC came back in pretty much instantly, so he hardly gained from the pit stop. Behrman was sent into free air. Behrman pushed into free air. Behrman then pitted himself, got caught behind Perez again, had to re-overtake him, and then picked up positions from the likes of Hulkenberg retiring, Verstappen retiring. Someone else retired who I've completely forgotten, I think. Lost a place to Piastri as he was coming back through, but generally drove a pretty strong race to what was initially a 13th place finish, then it was brought up to a 12th place finish. I think Behrman's drive, in my opinion, was pretty underrated, and of course, everyone knows that I'm going to say that regardless of if it was a drive to 12th or if it was a drive to 2nd or 1st. But I think that was genuinely quite good because Ocon looked to be on the ball. It wasn't like a classic Ocon weekend where he's 5 tenths off his teammate and nowhere. It was a genuinely good Ocon sprint. It was a genuinely decent enough Ocon qualifying. And then Behrman, not only he had damage, and I don't know what the gap was between them, but it was something ridiculous, probably about 20 seconds. And he made that up in a green flag in a green flag stint. Overtook him before all the safety car shenanigans happened, and then finished 12th. So, in my opinion, a superlative result. Not a superlative result, but a superlative performance. And Haas seemed to suck all of a sudden. Like, yes, previously they were kind of the mediocre of a midfield, but now they are genuinely comparable to Williams, which to me is shocking. The fact that the Williams beat them in sprint qualifying, the fact that they were pretty close in the main race, and Ocon got knocked out of Q1. Q1. And I think what's behind one of the Williams is shocking to me. I don't know what's happening with that team. Ferrari are superb, fantastic. They have all the parts. Like Haas's trajectories as a team in terms of their results and their performance has been directly linked to Ferrari throughout their entire history. Ferrari had a mid-season in 2016. The Haas were pretty average, even though it was good for a new team. They were pretty average. 2017, Ferrari was great. Haas were even better than they were in 2016. 2018, the Ferrari car was pretty good, and Haas had their best season. 2019, the Ferrari went down a bit. The Haas went down a bit. 2020, Ferrari was shit, so Haas was shit. 2021, Ferrari were slightly better, but Haas just had 2 rookie drivers. 2022, Ferrari were good, so Haas picked up in performance. 2023. Ferrari went slightly down and Haas went slightly down. Then 2024, and he's kind of stayed the same up until 2024. And 2025, Ferrari were kind of nowhere, and Haas were kind of in the midfield, kind of just behind them. And now Ferrari are really good, and Haas have just gotten worse since the season started. So I don't know if this means that once the ADO upgrades come in, that Haas are going to rocket up the field and they're going to be amazing. But I don't know if it's the case that they're finally starting to go to Toyota and they're going to focus less on the Ferrari, like I can't remember what you call them, the same things that Racing Point bought off Mercedes, the bought parts or whatever you call them, the parts that you can buy off of listed parts. I think that's what it is. The listed parts that you can buy from other teams. I don't know if they're going away from those because Toyota now exists and because Toyota want to get involved, but to be slower than Williams in 2026, considering the season that they've had, or to be equal to Williams in the season that they've had, is frankly unacceptable. And Ocon, to be honest, I think, although he's not been performing to what you'd expect of a driver of his caliber, I think he can stay for now. But Behrman either needs to try and force his way into Ferrari or leave that team, because if he stays past 2027 in Haas in a team like that, is a waste of a Formula One career, in my opinion. Like, let Lewis have another year after this one, but if he stays in Haas more than 3 years, because Russell stayed in Williams for 3 years and people thought that was way too much. And I think it's a similar case with Behrman. If he stays past 2027, if they want him to stay in 2027 past into Haas, he should go to somewhere else, even if it's somewhere like Aston or a midfield team that can build itself up. Go somewhere else other than Haas and Ferrari, because they clearly don't respect him enough to put him in a seat that he deserves.
What I noticed from Haas was that once Gunther Steiner left, then suddenly the performance of the car got disengaged from the performance of Ferrari. And so I remember them suddenly getting way better, and then having not so 2025, but then at times being way faster. And this year Ferrari is doing very good. Ferrari began moderately well and then improved. Haas began moderately well and then did not improve, got worse. So you see it's disengaged now that Gunther Steiner is no longer there. Probably it's true that Ayao Komatsu is doing things differently than Gunther.
As he should, because Gunther, as we all know, is most likely the worst team principal in F1 history since at least Manisha Kaltenborn, who signed 5 drivers to 2 seats in 2015.
Gunther was at Silverstone, of course, because they had him on the fan stage doing some interviews and some bullshit, because, of course, he won't just go away.
Yeah.
He always has to be there and insert himself into everything.
Yes.
But I mean, like Mark Slade told us in our exclusive interview, small plug, Haas is a very small team. They don't have a big budget. They don't have throngs of engineers, so they are limited in what they can do compared to the big ones.
Yeah, they are. And I don't put any blame on Haas specifically, as much as I say, like, Behrman should leave. It's not because I think I don't like Haas, it's because I don't like... I always said, and I said this at the time, and I'll say it again, Hamilton is doing it exceptionally well, but Hamilton could be winning every race by 40 million seconds, and I still think that Ferrari shot themselves in the foot by signing him, because you went from having Charles Leclerc, who is almost irreplaceable, and Ferrari will not let him go if they have any say in it, and Sainz, who they could just get rid of at any point, to having 2 drivers who are irreplaceable, and Ferrari, Leclerc is irreplaceable for Ferrari because they're not going to get rid of him, and Hamilton will only go from that team when he's done. And it's just a case that Behrman has no way in now until either Leclerc leaves, Lewis leaves, or Lewis gets incredibly worse, or decides to retire. And those are all outside factors. And as I said, with the Russell example at Williams, most people thought after 2020 that Russell deserved the 2021 Mercedes seat, and I believe that was actually going to be the case, that he was supposed to go there, but it was either Hamilton didn't want the threat of a good second driver, or a competitive second driver at least, or someone in the team didn't want it, whether it was Toto, whether it was whoever, or whether it was just a combined decision. But I'm not gonna suggest that Behrman would jump into that Ferrari and be on the level of Hamilton and Leclerc, because I think, especially considering the peaks that those two have had, I think that Behrman could probably reach those peaks, but he does have his ups and downs more so than at least Hamilton. Leclerc this season has been up and down a bit. And I don't think Behrman will be crashing as much, but he might have the odd average weekend, if you will. Because he has had, as much as he's had some fantastic weekends this season, he has had some average or less impressive weekends. And I think that's kind of, at least for now, that's a driver he is. One of those drivers like, to be fair, Ocon, who has good weekend, average weekend, good weekend, average weekend. And to be fair, Maldonado was also like that. Good weekend, average weekend, mediocre weekend, great weekend, average. Those kind of drivers do exist. And again, Behrman's only 20, turning 21 this year. So, in fact, he's probably already turned 21. So yeah, I think that he should, if he doesn't get into Ferrari by 2028, he should be looking elsewhere.
I think I told the story already once. The reason Russell didn't go to Mercedes in 2021 was because Claire Williams was selling the team, and she found out that having the Claire Williams found out that having Russell under contract or not having him made a pretty substantial difference in the worth of the team, and so how much she was gonna sell it for. And so she enforced a clause in the contract to keep Russell in 2021, to the absolute rage of Toto Wolff, who actually wanted to promote Russell already, and instead was forced to wait another year.
Yeah, so that proves even more, because that was obviously a politics decision then to keep Russell there. There's no reason. I mean, again, if Sainz was still the driver in that Ferrari seat, it would be somewhat excusable to boot him out for Behrman, because obviously he's a good driver, but he's not a truly elite generational talent. So it would be respectable to get rid of him for a young talent who could become that. But now they've got Leclerc and Hamilton, and he's at their whim essentially, which I don't like, because I think that Behrman right now, I think Behrman could have jumped into the Ferrari seat if regardless of whoever the driver is in that second seat now. I think Behrman could have jumped into that seat at the end of at the start of this year and done a respectable job. Could have equaled what Sainz did in the years against Leclerc, at least the peaks. Maybe not the average performance, but at least the peaks. And I think he would have done some really good things, but that didn't end up happening. So, some part of me hopes that either Leclerc hasn't seen since he signed a multi-year deal, but I think that means that the only other option would be for Hamilton to somehow go from being great to being terrible.
Well, if he has to go somewhere else, one potential option could be Williams, I dare say, because they again had a fairly rotten weekend. They had a supposedly special livery, which was like, it was meant to be Union Jack, but there was literally there was a couple of like red stripes on the nose cone, and they're like, that makes a Union Jack apparently. Although the special edition caps did look quite good, but yeah, nothing about that livery read as Union Jack, especially compared to like 2 years ago when they just had a giant Union Jack on the engine cover. But yeah, lower midfield, again, neither of them were very optimistic in their interviews. Albon had the collision with Behrman, so he was just out of it the whole race. And Sainz had a 1-lap penalty, which is really odd. I didn't know those were things, so that was a new thing. He'd apparently, I think wasn't his thing, he'd unlapped himself without permission or whatever. So I don't know what was going on there. So yeah, they're just in a bit of a crap place, and it's getting kind of dull with Williams just not making any progress, really.
Yeah, it appears the team has finally decided that it's unrecoverable, the current car, and so they're gonna bring a big spec upgrade in after the summer break. I think they were targeting Baku, but maybe they can bring it to Madrid for Sainz's race, obviously. And so that would be another team along with Aston Martin who's gonna bring a big spec because they screwed over the pre-season.
I think Williams is quite interesting in the sense that they are kind of not that interesting because the teams ahead of them are fighting for points and the teams behind them are a complete train wreck. And so they provide interesting content. And then Williams is just existing in this land of we are never getting a point, but then also we are not 5 seconds off the pace. So it's always kind of difficult to talk about them. But yeah, I mean, it's actually crazy how Williams has been off the next year every single year since like 2017. That like this year is gone, we're gonna focus on next year, and they do this every time, and then they are randomly better, and then they still decide that this season is not worth it, and then the next year they are terrible randomly. It's just such a weird dynamic of their performance. Like every single year they say that this year it's over, we're focusing on next year, and then sometimes they turn up with a fairly competent car, and then sometimes they produce a dud like this season. So
I just think they need to get rid of Alex Albon. I think that genuinely, what does he do at this point? All he does is take out drivers who are infinitely better than he is, and hang around at the back, get beat by Carlos Sainz, get beat by Franco Colapinto, get beat by Max Verstappen, get beat by Daniel Kvyat. He was supposed to be in Formula E. And they brought him into F1 because of Ricciardo leaving. Ricciardo is also an antichrist because he allowed Alex Albon to get into Formula One. Why would you leave Red Bull? Why not just stay there and stop Alex Albon from getting into Formula One because he was supposed to go into Formula E, which is where he belongs because it's a series for, at least it was a series for average, middling drivers who either never made it to Formula One or are just want to supplement WEC careers is all I'll say for that. But yeah, Albon, bring in Ocon, bring in Lawson, bring in someone who isn't 30 and washed. I'm pretty sure that he is 1 year younger than Carlos Sainz, maybe 2.
Please tell me Albon isn't 30.
I think he
Can't be
is.
30. Oh,
I
no.
think he is. I think I will check the birth year now, but I think he is. I can just double check. Alex Albon.
he was born in 1996, March of 1996.
Yeah, he is 30.
So he is 2 years younger than Carlos Sainz. He is a year older than Max Verstappen, and he's achieved nothing. Why? I genuinely don't know why teams still hire him. I suppose he was decent when Williams had Latifi and Sargent, but we don't know if those cars were just being underdriven. We know those cars are being underdriven by Latifi and Sargent. People say about other drivers that they had terrible teammates, so you can't really gauge their performances. But with Albon, they say, oh well, it must have been good. Why? Who says that the Williams is in 2022 and 2023 when I'm not going to say on the same level as Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull, but on a level that was kind of closer to them than it was the rest of the midfield. I don't know, because as we saw, if Nick de Vries can make a car look good, it's probably a great car. So yeah, get rid of Alex Albon. He's not a downright bad driver. He's just overwhelmingly mediocre, and he needs to go so that we can get someone like. Honestly, at this point, I would prefer, even if he's not an outright better driver, I would prefer Luke Browning in that car. I would even prefer, I think at this point, Victor Chartans, a driver who I absolutely detest, because Alex Albon has just done me in so much in terms of annoyance.
I mean, Martins has been a non-factor for anything on ages.
What do you say, Ace?
I know you hate Albon. I don't want to restart the discussion. We already did once. Right now, he wouldn't last in the seat. But one positive thing I can take away from his season right now is that he's prone to self-sacrifice for the team. He's pitted, he's taken pit lane starts to try setups, to learn, to help the team as much as possible. That's the only thing positive I can say about Albon this year.
Good. Use him as the whipping boy so Sainz can get all the results. If that's what you need to do, because he's not going to get them by himself. So just beat him with a barge pole if you need to. Just I don't know. Like genuinely, I don't know why people. I don't think people rate him. Like truly think that he's like this great talent. But there's a lot of people who think like, oh yeah, he's a decent driver. He's a good driver, but he's just not. He's just at least bottom 5, if not bottom 3, if not bottom 2 drivers on the grid. But I think the only person who can be overall considered even on his level is Stroll. And even I think Stroll, on the evidence of we don't really know where to put him this season, Albon has been overwhelmingly worse than what his car should be, even though the car is still terrible. But Stroll has been the same as what he is most years, a couple of attempts behind Alonso and beats him once in every fortnight, once in every blue moon. And so therefore by that evidence, I think Albon is probably quite, maybe not comfortably, but by that logic, I can actually say that I think he's the worst driver on the grid.
That's just crazy. I just have to disagree with that. Like saying that, if I think it's not crazy to put him as like the second worst driver on the grid, but I think at this point putting anybody below Lance Stroll is just not fair, because we have seen Stroll in fairly competitive or somewhat competitive cars.
And he was
he's
better than
fucking
Perez.
dog shit. He's awful. He's fucking terrible. Like Rocket Powered Mohawk made the biggest YouTube channel in Formula 1 history on just straight up talking about how ass Lance Stroll is. And it worked because he is fucking awful. And Albon sometimes makes mistakes, but when he had good cars, he consistently delivered performances, beating drivers on the caliber of Lance Stroll. He like obviously he doesn't have the car to show it, and yes, he is getting beaten by Sainz. I think it would be fair to say that this version of Sainz is actually fairly comparable to 2026 Alonso, in my opinion. And I think Albon has been a lot better relative to his teammate, and then also he's the closest thing we've seen to 2024 Magnussen in the past few years. So I really think you really are just overhating Albon, and when you said that he's the second worst driver in the grid, I was like, yeah, well, that's subjective but fair. You could say that, but no, you just cannot put him below Lance Stroll. I just cannot accept that.
Anyway, regardless, I think we can move on from bashing Thai people. Maybe we can bash Dicky Bro people instead. I don't know, but maybe what was the next team?
Cadillac. So I should probably say something, since I went out of my way to buy this, because like I wouldn't mind some. I mean, last year I should have bought some Kick Sauber merch because it would suddenly become vintage and looks good. And this is still
quickly before we go, are you going to go and pimp my ride and go and become a drug dealer now you've got a Cadillac?
I would love a Cadillac. I think they're cool. I wonder what their company car is actually that those two drive.
It's going to be an Escalade, isn't it?
Oh yeah, probably is an Escalade. It's that and the Ciaron are like the only two cars that Cadillac make, and they're like 20 years old.
Bottas and Perez coming out like two presidents.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, so those shows when they went to the fan stage, they were a lot of people stayed around for them, even though they just had the McLarens on. And I think because the thing is, Bottas still has like meme potential, which people like, and Checo they don't mind, I guess. But to be fair, in terms of performance, they are improving. I mean, this is one of the things I noticed watching the race in person was they were keeping up with the field. I mean, in the sprint they fell behind a little, but in the race they were sticking with them, and it was the Astons disappearing. So that's something. They're quite comfortably ahead of. They're about a second faster than Aston Martin in qualifying, and very much ahead of them in the races. So and there weren't any reliability. Well, I suppose in the sprint, Checo crashed into Alonso or hit Alonso, and Bottas had some problems. But considering they're a new team, yeah, it is going reasonably well at the moment, and the cars look good in real life as well.
Yeah. I will say, whenever I see Valtteri Bottas on the TV screens, he looks scarily closer and closer to what Keke Rosberg used to look like. Genuine. I don't know if he's purposely going for that look. I'm not sure if he's trying to emulate Keke Rosberg. I will just say he is the opposite. He is the antithesis of Keke Rosberg. He is not an aggressive driver. He isn't balls to the wall. He's if Keke Rosberg was balls to the wall, Bottas would be. I can't think of some sort of analogy. He would be balls to the picnic table. I don't know. I don't know why that came into my mind, but we're gonna roll with it. And Perez was, I guess, good. Held Behrman up, which I guess Mexican Minister of Defense 2.0, even though he wasn't even trying, I guess. Yeah, Cadillac existed, did a couple of things, ran around. They weren't as bad as Aston Martin. They weren't as good as the rest of the midfield. Yay. Carry on.
Yeah, so we didn't see the upgrades in effect in Austria just because both cars retired almost immediately. So clearly the upgrades work, and clearly Aston Martin are fucking terrible, because if Cadillac managed to make up that deficit, how did Aston Martin not manage to make up that deficit? So yeah, I think I'm just gonna transition this to being Aston Martin and start bashing them a bit because they deserve it. So in the races, they were about 5 seconds a lap of the pace, which sounds like a lot because it's basically the same pace difference as we have at Le Mans between the hypercars and the LMP2s. It is actually a different category. So that's roughly, we are getting 2 different categories on track in the F1 grid and then the Astons. It's actually a different category. And well, according to, they started talking about the upgrades. We're gonna get almost a B-spec car in Hungary, and then for Zandvoort, they're bringing the rest of those upgrades that make it truly the B-spec car, and then Honda is bringing their supposedly big engine upgrade. So yeah, and I mean, Lance Stroll was driving the car like it's 2005 Alonso. Basically, Alonso gave him some tips on how to drive the car, just to create the incredible amounts of understeer and extra lock. Maybe that will help, because truly nothing is saving this above. And then also in the sprints, or no, in the qualies, they were like at 105%. So we're actually getting kind of close to them triggering the 107% rule.
I think the B spec model needs to be the biggest upgrade we've seen in recent Formula One history. Like, genuinely, like, Force India brought a B spec in 2015, 2016, I think. And that was the last time a truly B spec car came out, I think. But this needs to be on another level of, like, I'm trying to think of an example of not where a team like did the first couple of races with a year-old car and then brought their real car for the new year. But I'm trying to think the last time that a team actually had an impactful B-spec car must have been the 90s or the 80s.
But I have a little bit of insider knowledge on this. The next car's going to be a lot lighter. Apparently, that's good at one area they're working on is definitely weight loss. But like I wouldn't be able to see it from where I was my vantage point. But the full lock through Cops and Beckett's, like, how do you do that and not spin the car? Like,
because Stroll's a very good driver, better than Alex Albon.
But it's like you just don't need to do that. There aren't many circuits where you need to do full lock other than like the Lowe's hairpin at Monaco. So what on earth is that? And you'll attest to this in both races, the gap was gigantic, the fall off, and they were running in pairs in both races until one of them broke down in each of them. But they were just really, really. I think it took about 20 laps for them to get lapped in the main race. They're getting at the beginning of the season, other than the nerve damage, it was kind of passable on pace, and now they have just really fallen off.
I'm guessing they've literally bought no upgrades and everyone else has, and they're just going to bring all theirs in one. The only problem with bringing one upgrade or running all upgrades at once is acclimatization. Like if Alonso and Stroll jump into a car and it is genuinely 2 or 3 seconds quicker per lap than what it was the last race, where are they going to know what the ceiling is? They're going to push, and then they're going to go, I can go faster, and they're going to push, and they're going to go, I'm going to go faster, and we keep pushing, and eventually, where's the ceiling? That's what they're going to basically be saying, and they might underdrive the car. That's the only issue I can see with an upgrade of this gargantuan size. If it's going to be 2 or 3 seconds a lap quicker, because that is huge. That is going to be like a track like let's just take Hungary for example. I think Hungary has 15 corners, something around about that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
If
10,
they were
11,
3 seconds faster this weekend, they'd have been on pace with McLaren.
Yeah.
So they're probably gonna. I think the best they can hope for is to be up there with like Williams, probably.
Yeah, on a 15 corner track. Let's say Hungary, because most of it, the time is gained through the corners. You very rarely get much, unless it's acceleration. You're not going to really get much through on the straights. That is more than a tenth and a half per corner that you're gaining. That is ridiculous. So I genuinely don't know what Alonso and Stroll are going to do if they get a car like that. I think that I'm not sure if I'm going to say it's silly, because I'm not going to tell Adrian Newey how to design a Formula One car. He wrote an entire book on the thing. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Aston perform over the coming season. I think that I'm still going to go out on a limb and say my dark horse prediction is that they will be scoring points by the end of the year. But other than that, I don't think there's much we can really say on them, other than let's just laugh at them until they get better.
Okay, then I guess that covers all the teams. Yeah, tops and flops. Tops, well, I'd say Leclerc, Antonelli, and maybe Lawson. They were all good, I think.
I'll go for Leclerc, I'll go for Lawson, and then I'll go for Berman, because I do think it was an underrated performance.
Leclerc, Antonelli, Bortoleto.
I'll go for Leclerc, Antonelli, and Hajar.
Flops, well, Albon, Stroll, just cause. I guess Piastri. What was his wing braking? Was that his fault? I don't. He like spun at Luffield, didn't he? Or
I don't know. Like, as far as I never saw it on the broadcast.
yeah, maybe
I have no idea what happened actually.
Must have just broken on its own or whatever. But
my flops,
He
I'm
had
going to go.
contact with Lawson. Sorry.
Okay.
He had contact with Lawson.
I think my flops are going to be Alex Albon getting outperformed by Carlos Sainz, Alex Albon crashing into Ollie Behrman, and Alex Albon.
Okay, my flops are Albon, Red Bull, because they had the same exact problem already 2 weekends in a row, and Aston Martin.
Yeah,
just because I don't have Ariel for choice.
Mine is Aston Martin, Hülkenberg's luck, and the Red Bull rear wing.
No, Alex Albon?
Yeah, it's up there, but he would have needed to done something more drastic, like maybe take out Colapinto along with Berman. Then I would have given it to him. He only ruined one driver's race, so I can't give him the actual flop award just yet.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, good weekend overall. Obviously, very different to normal to actually go in person. I suppose that's like, I think all four of us have been to races, so we all know what it's roughly like. 2 weeks we got Spa, as I said, great circuit. How these cars work there should be interesting. But we're really in the thick of it with the with the European leg now. So yeah, we'll just have to see if Mercedes can hang on. I think, and otherwise this could get very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay then. You've been listening to the DRS Train podcast. We're on YouTube and Spotify at the DRS Train podcast. Become a channel member, and you can find all of our extra bonus content and behind the scenes footage. You can join our current members: Ariel Quinnell Silverstein, Britt Toshkun, Elizabeth Hearn, Chris Adair, and Blue Guy. Make sure to tune in for our next episode. Stay safe, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye.